And when we got to the UK, people were so violent against us, so much to where we had one night had to be escorted out by the police because there was going to be a riot, and people wanted to kill us. And it was really insane that the Yeah Yeah Yeahs fans wanted to kill us.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I'm your host, Mike Doyle. Before we begin, check out the song Medication by the band Webbed Wing if you're looking for some new tunes. They didn't pay me to say this, and I don't even think they know about this podcast, but the song is fucking awesome, and it's got like a kind of a 90s grunge vibe to it. And I've just had it on repeat for the last couple weeks, so check it out. The Locust was an American hardcore punk band from San Diego, known for their mix of grindcore speed and aggression and new wave experimentation complexity. Vocalist slash bassist Justin Pearson, who I talked to, once said, "I wanted to change the way people perceive music or maybe just destroy it in general." The Locust music is complex, dynamic, and fast-paced, often featuring abrupt and inconsistent time signature changes. These erratic elements are, according to vocalist guitarist Bobby Bray, a reflection of perhaps how our brains have to function in order to be able to do anything in the Western societies we live in. You're going to see a theme in the next 3 episodes that just completely happened accidentally, but all 3 of these interviews are just fucking awesome, and I'm really excited to launch every fucking one of them. I got Justin on the Skype, and this is what we chat about. Getting kicked out of his house at 16, what it was like recording, how they started wearing uniforms, touring with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, getting shit by people for signing to Epitaph, the Extreme Elvis interview, being on the Jerry Springer Show, Head Wound City, and a ton more. Check out his podcast, Cult and Culture, which is a podcast along with the producer and musician Luke Henshaw. The show explores the DIY-driven, subversive world of art and culture, featuring a diverse array of guests from various subcultures. The podcast, recorded at PengOne Studios in San Diego, or PengOne, as it's spelled, offers frank, informal, and well-informed conversations with guests ranging from Grammy-winning musicians to actors like John Waters and the Black Panther Party members. The aim is to blur traditional guest host lines and foster casual openness. Cult and Culture is available wherever you podcast. Check out Justin's other projects, including Def Club, which he fronts as the main vocalist, and the Mike Patton-fronted Dead Cross. Lastly, if you are in need of an explainer animation or whiteboard animations, check out my company drive80.com. It's drive80.com. I've been animating for over 13 years, and this is my main thing. This is how I actually make a living. So if you are a marketing director or CMO or have a connection to either of those in your company, then let them know that I'm here. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. The first time I think I remember hearing about you guys was some zine that I can't remember, but I think it was the thing that made you stand out. I was like, I like harder music. I like that stuff that's a bit more aggressive, or however you'd say it. The one thing that made me remember you guys initially was just the costumes and everything like that. I'm guessing that kind of helped in the beginning to have you guys stand out a little bit in that era.
The uniforms were never really anything to stand out. I mean, we did it as like a fuck you to people, because I think at that point, it was pre-internet. There was a lot of zines and stuff like that. Or maybe the internet had just like started. I don't know. Anyhow, people were just constantly talking shit about the way we looked in regular street clothes. It was kind of frustrating to see a review of a show or a record and it just talked about like our clothes or our hair. We were kind of like, well, fuck these people. Let's just wear these weird uniforms. And then that kind of took off. It became our thing or whatever. I don't want to say shtick, because it wasn't like we weren't trying to do it in like a marketing way or anything. We were just into weird shit. Like we were really into Devo is a good example. That was just like they were just weird, and we were just kind of like, oh, that seems like a cool idea, but without even really realizing what we were doing, because we were also some of us were like kind of big fans of the Beatles and stuff, and like later Beatles when they got into drugs and shit too, where they kind of still had matching outfits and stuff, but more so stuff like Devo or the Residents or something. So yeah, that was our point. So then we felt like if someone was like just reviewing us or a record or something and saying something about our uniforms at that time, it's like, okay, well that's fine, because we're putting effort into it now, because before we weren't. So yeah, that was that.
So I'm gonna jump back into like how you guys started, how you got in the scene, and things like that. Just for a second, I'm sure every interview, there's a couple things. One, I'm sure I'm gonna ask you questions that you've answered like probably 1,000 times, but like I'm thinking there might be new people in this audience that might not know some of these stories because I was doing some research and I've seen some of the questions I have are from previous interviews that I've seen, but I kind of want to get more answers out of them, I guess, in my own way. And so hopefully you're not,
Totally.
yeah, hopefully you're not like, oh, I'm so sick of fucking answering this.
Well, you know what? I want to say this though. As much as someone might be like, I'm sick of answering this question, but as far as like that is concerned, like I'm grateful that someone gives a shit about anything I've been part of, and so I'll talk about it over and over and over and over if people care. I think if someone is, maybe not as open to talking about certain things because it is repetitious or might seem sort of old, I think that may make them kind of seem like a jerk. And I'm also aware of like younger people that missed it and now they're into it. So that's cool too. So yeah, let's talk about all this stuff that's been talked about.
Yeah, I haven't, you'll be like, we're a couple, a hundred, I'm a couple hundred episodes in, and I've
I'm
lucked.
impressed. I saw that. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've lucked out. Every interview, everyone I've talked to has just been super cool. Like, I'm guessing with you guys through the years, like maybe some people were like, wow, they're really loud and stuff. And afterwards, you're like, hey, what's going on? They're like, holy shit, these guys are really nice.
Yeah, well, I do constantly hear that I'm unapproachable still, like to this day. And I also, for like most of my life during while playing music, I heard that I was a dick, and I am a dick. Like I'm fully aware of that. But like I think it's warranted. For the most part, I feel like I can read a person and be like, you know what? Like I'm gonna just treat you how you're asking me to treat you, and that if that's shitty, then like that's how it's gonna be, because yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm a total dick, and I think it's justified. But like I said, like us talking here is awesome. Or if someone was to approach me or any of the projects I've been part of in person and have like a certain demeanor, like just like treat me decently, and I'll be the same. But if you're gonna come at me with some attitude, then I don't know. I just don't really, especially now. It's like I don't fucking have the time for that stuff anymore. I definitely did back, in my 20s. I would just go off on someone if I needed to, but I mean, I don't prefer that. I definitely don't prefer it. But
Yeah.
people are fucking assholes. People really are assholes, especially to the Locust. Like it's crazy how, I don't want to say like how mean people were, but like it wasn't just like people being like saying that we were dicks or being dicks to us. It was like people fucking beating us up and like trashing our shit, trying to kill us. So then, yeah, fucking, we're gonna be a little defensive, I guess.
So I'll probably get back. It'll probably lead into more stories like that where people are doing that. But before I jump back into how you got into it, so I didn't grow up. I lived in San Diego for about 6 months in 2003 to 2004, and I was right in downtown. I was right in the flight path on Second and Hawthorne. How close to downtown? Because you live in San Diego, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. I'm in City Heights, so I'm like a 10-minute drive from where you used to live.
So did you ever go to Scolari's back in the day?
Of course.
Really? Did you ever go to the punk rock karaoke on Wednesdays?
I don't think I did. I never. I think anything with no offense, but anything with the term like punk rock on it, and I try to.
Well, it wasn't that. It was more just like the local punk kids were going there, and they're more like in their mid 20s, early 30s. But they would go and we'd sing regular karaoke. But like me and my buddy got a booth.
Yeah, yeah. Got it. Totally, totally. No, I don't think I ever did. The only time I've really ever done karaoke, I think, was in Japan, which I feel like maybe it's warranted there. But no, I mean, Scholari's I went to a lot. It became the office. I mean, it was kind of a legendary place for shows. I saw some crazy shit there. Like I saw the Faint play inside that place. Like a cattle decapitation played in there. Like yeah, I've seen all kinds of weird stuff. So
It's awesome.
yeah, Scholari's office.
Yeah, I used to love. I used to go there all the time. That's how I met like a bunch of people. I met Jay from Spaz Boy. Like he was a local band around there. But yeah, all right. So let's go back in time to how'd you first get into the scene?
I guess it was just I don't know. I mean, when I was 12, I moved to San Diego and I was really into music already. And I would go to all these record stores and I found a bunch of local bands. And then I started like kind of being friends with some of them.
Do you remember some of the bands?
Yeah, well, the ones that really stuck out were like the people that were in Amenity and Force Down, I think because they were kind of more on the ethical and moral side of bands. And so being friends with someone like Mike Down at the time or like Tim Gonzalez really kind of steered me in a direction. But I was also friends with like bands like these bands Meat Wagon and Funeral March, which were like a little bit more like on the, like the 21 and up. And I'm not saying this like in a negative way, but like kind of like party, kind of like playing bars, where like Amenity and Force Down was like all ages. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is like I knew a bunch of different bands, or like Social Spit was a huge band that a big influence for me, knowing Cliff from Social Spit. It was kind of meeting the people in Amenity and stuff, and then discovering the Che Cafe, which is like it's like the ABC No Rio or the Smell or something, legend, or Gilman Street. And then it was going to the Che and meeting people, and that was my in.
What was like the driving for? Like, what did you like about it?
Well, being 13 years old is it's kind of hard to like stumble upon like something rad. At the time, all the bands that I liked were playing 21 and up shows, so obviously I wasn't able to see them. I met some people, and I ended up seeing bands like the Cramps and PIL when I was 13 and 14, and that was kind of where I started. So going to like regular like I guess at the time those were like regular concerts, going to those and then meeting friends my age, and then going to places like the Che Cafe where it was like younger bands and younger people. It wasn't, it was before DIY was a term, it was DIY. So it was, you were meeting people that were doing stuff that seemed tangible. So you're like, oh, I can approach this band and I can talk to this band and I could be friends with them really easily. And that was kind of the thing that made it seem like, oh, I could probably do something similar. And it just so happened that I, played a certain instrument, and three of my other friends played certain instruments. And then there we go, we had a band, and it was kind of very organic in a sense. It took a while to figure out what we were doing, but that was like how I got into it all, I guess.
Was the Locust the first band you did, or did that come a couple bands later?
Yeah, it took a few years to get to that point. I started playing music with a band called Struggle when I was 15, and then that band did some stuff with Ebullition, and we toured a little bit, and then we broke up and started a band called Swing Kids with similar members, and both those bands had members of Unbroken, and so it was kind of already dialing things in. And then during the time I was in Swing Kids, I also started the Locust, and I was 19. Again, it was always kind of like people that I went to school with, or someone that we saw from around town, or a friend's little brother, or something, whatever. So like it was just really like easy to like piece it together and become or start bands. Yeah, so the Locust started when I was 19.
Oh wow.
I don't know what year that was.
So you toured before you were 19?
I toured when I was 15 in Struggle. Yeah.
Oh shit. How did that happen? Like, who was driving?
The first tour I went on with Struggle, Rop, who was in the Peaches and Rice, drove us in a station wagon. And
It's amazing.
we toured up the West Coast. There was also this like sort of side project-ish kind of band called Brain Tourniquet, which had people from Struggle in it, which also had people from End of the Line and John Henry West, and it was a kind of hodgepodge of stuff. But we also toured in that band too when I might have been 16, but I think I was still 15. And then Swing Kids toured a little bit when I was 19, 18, and then the Locust did, of course, at 19. So yeah, I was doing it pretty early. When I was still in high school, I would tour, obviously on winter break or during the summer. But my mom kicked me out when I was 16, so I pretty much could do whatever the hell I wanted from 16 to then on. Like I didn't have to wait to kind of like find quote unquote freedom, from my parents. So getting kicked out was a blessing. I actually got kicked out and moved into a housing co-op, which was affiliated with the Che Cafe people. So I was very much like right away just involved in like the Che and how things worked, and like working with people there, like booking, and being part of the core Che people at the time. That was interesting. It helped. I think it really helped me organize the ability to navigate touring, and then eventually starting a record label and stuff too. So yeah, it all happened really fast and early for me.
Did you feel like that, like getting kicked out, did you feel a sense of like relief in a sense where you were just like, okay, now I can do whatever the fuck I want? Like literally, I have no, it's like, was it not scary, I guess is the question.
Oh, That's such a great question because I got kicked out. I was so my dad was murdered when I was 12, and then my mom moved me to San Diego. She moved us in with her new boyfriend who was very abusive to everybody. By the time I got to 16 and my mom kicked me out, I was pretty grateful because I was really sick of getting in fights with this guy, and it was kind of getting to this point to where I mean, I'm still pretty small, and I'm not like that. I'm not very tough or anything, but at 16, I was definitely not tough. But I was able to kind of find a way to stand up to this guy that was abusing me and my mom. And I mean, I felt bad for my mom, but she also was like not stopping him from hitting me and abusing me. So as soon as she kicked me out, I was like, oh, that's fucking great. I'm gonna go somewhere else and not get beat up. Because there was a couple moments where like I would have friends over and he would try to fight me or he would try to like hurt me and I'd be like, me and my friends are gonna fuck you up right now, and so it was pretty wild. I mean, he it was like not fun. Like he fucking broke my mom's arm once. He pulled a gun out on me once. Like it was a wild time. So when I got kicked out, it wasn't scary at all. I was like, fuck yeah, this is so sick. And I immediately moved into this housing co-op that I mentioned. But what I did was I kind of brokered a deal with my mom where, so since my dad died, my mom was getting Social Security for my dad's death insurance, and I got a portion of it. So like I was getting, I don't know how much it was. I think it was like $400 a month or something, and that was like for my mom to pay for my medical insurance and car insurance or whatever up until I turned 18. So I told her, I was like, you keep half of that shit, and like I want the other half, and I'm gonna use that to pay my rent at this place I moved into. And then I was really smart and I knew how to steal a lot. I shoplifted a lot, but I stole a lot of crazy shit. Like back in the 90s, you could steal from vending machines really easily with tape dollars, like with packing tape on dollar bills, or also you could just squirt salt water into them. And so I would just go around town and steal money, and I actually lived like a king. I mean, I had quite a lot. I stole a lot. And then that would also sustain us on tour as well. Going on tour like now, I think like how the hell did we do that back then? And it was really like every time we would stop at a place and we would just steal, and then kind of. I think if you're driving a van and every time you pull over to stop, you get like an extra $80. It's like it's not that bad. Maybe it wasn't $80, but gas was also a lot cheaper back then. It was crazy. So we were able to kind of like sustain ourselves on tour. I mean, occasionally we'd get in trouble and stuff with the law, but for the most part, we avoided it and just figured out how to live.
I feel like that totally matches the lore of your band.
I mean, maybe I think that we were all. I mean, fuck, especially Gabe. Like when he came into the picture, and Bobby. All of us kind of just came from this weird. I don't even know. I don't know how to explain it. Like it just things were just gnarly. I mean, and that's why I think we ended up playing the kind of music we did. It was just a rough world that we came from. Even with people in struggle and swing kids, it was like Jose Palafox is a good example, but he was never really good at being like sort of stealth about stealing. He kind of he was a little bit too obvious. But everybody in the Locust was like full on, I think, legit criminal material, and it was cool. Yeah, it was great.
I've seen, like I said, I was looking at a couple interviews that you guys did back in the day, and you kind of, when someone's on camera, you can't really tell their personality. Like sometimes they're holding back or they're not holding back. But it seemed like because there's the three of you guys were being interviewed, and one of the guys was a little quiet. It just seemed like you all, not a chip on your shoulder, but you all seemed like, I don't know, just like you had something to say. Like you guys were kind of out against the world almost, it seemed like.
It was that kind of us against them mentality, and it's really weird. That statement kind of has a lot of levels because it was like in general, we were like these. I don't want to sound arrogant or something, but we were like these sort of leftist artists in the world of music trying to challenge. I mean, granted, we were just a band, but like we were very in tune with social politics and politics at large. And so we were, we kind of drew this line, like what we stood for and what we were against. And then we put into this subculture of punk and hardcore. And then there's still all this shit that happens in that, like people were constantly fucking with us. We were always called fags and getting beat up for like not being, a macho or whatever. And luckily we didn't really have a whole lot of like racist shit to deal with. It was mainly like homophobic stuff, which is crazy because I don't think any of us even identified as gay. It was just like people were just shitting on us nonstop. And then I think because of the way we looked and stuff with our regulars.
Were these people like in the scene itself, or are these people outside of like venues?
Yeah, no, in the scene. I mean, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but like I remember, so like before the Locust, which was Swing Kids, for me, it was like we were part of that thing that kind of that shift where we all kind of grew up with certain hardcore bands and see and like a scene that surrounded, Southern California was ebullition, but like this whole like shift happened with bands like Antioch Arrow and kind of like that gravity scene where like it got people like kind of were into like looking like mods and like doing like kind of just having a different identity. And that was we were all kind of into that. And that was the thing that I felt like we like kind of gravitated towards. I remember like the first Swing Kids show was in Santa Barbara and Kent McClard was there and was just making fun of us to our faces and shit. And that was kind of a drag because we're like, man, this is like our comrade. He put out three of the people in Swing Kids, the other band, Struggle, and he was making fun of us because of the way we looked and stuff. And we were essentially the same people. We just had like kind of better like normal hair or like we didn't have your typical 90s hardcore outfit which was like cut off camo pants and like a black t-shirt. We just had swag, and I think that like that might have been threatening to people at the time, and it was just bizarre to us. So there was that little kind of like just shit talking stuff, but then it got a little bit crazier with the Locust, where people were just like we had like this straight edge gang called Monster Crew, I think is what they were called, who were trying to kill us. They beat up some of us a couple times, and then there was like just people like from Gehenna beating us up, and just it was like kind of fucking lame. Like we're like, dude, you guys are dicks because they're fighting the Locust. They're not like fighting, the actual oppressor. They're not out fighting like cops or like I don't know, like or Nazis. They're fighting like fucking four weird punks, and it's or five or however many people were in the band at the time. But like it was just jarring at the time. It's like, where is our community and who are our friends and where do we align ourselves with? And it was bizarre.
Did that, I don't know, like so when the band starts and that's happening and you guys are going through all this, did it kind of make you like you start off in this punk scene is almost like a home base in a sense, and you get kicked out, you go to Shea Cafe, and like that community like brings you in and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's kind of working against you. Did you feel a little bit like what the fuck?
I think since I was born, I felt like what the fuck. But I still feel like it actually. But so that's a good point because going to the Che as a 12 or 13-year-old, I felt like there was something for me there, but it wasn't ever like I didn't always feel like, oh, this is safe because in the 90s there was a huge neo-Nazi problem. So there were tons of fucking Nazi skinheads at the Che watching bands like Amenity or whoever and like biting and like beating the shit out of people. And so those people were always it never was like this is fun and this is a safe space. And I know the Che is it considers itself a safe space, and I'm not criticizing the Che. I'm criticizing like I mean, it just was different. It was a different landscape then. I mean, now everyone seems very precious in a sense where like in the 90s when you're growing up, it was fucked up and it was always fucked up no matter where you were. If it wasn't going to the Che and getting beat up by Nazi skinheads, it was going on tour and getting beat up by racist redneck pricks at a fucking truck stop or something, or if it wasn't that, it was like straight edge gangs wanting to fuck with us because we were weird. We weren't like a normal band or whatever. So it constantly was like aggressive, I guess.
I feel like that would be just such a driving force of the years to just be like, all right, what are we gonna do next? What are we gonna do next? Like, either like you're gonna just really lean into it, or you're gonna be like, you know what, fuck this. This is too much energy.
I mean, I think we leaned into it just basically because we wanted to play music and make art with each other and do this thing, and that was enough for us to put up with the shit. But it's kind of crazy because in retrospect, we probably should have just said fuck this because I mean, there was one point I remember where we toured and we were just getting like beat up so much and like we got maced and stuff. So we went and bought tasers to like start fucking tasing people, like it's like we're just trying to play music, it was like we just want to play music and that's it. And like it was kind of crazy. I mean, luckily like the violence was never more than like getting punched a few times or getting our a tire slashed or something like that or getting maced. It wasn't ever like hospitalized or something along those lines, which I mean it very well could have, but man, I don't know, it's just a strange ass world.
Yeah, and you guys are like tiny. You guys are not like tiny, but you guys are like pretty skinny dudes. Like,
And the thing that's fucked up is I was the tallest one, so people would inherently try to fight me first, which is just kind of wild. I feel like weird about it because when I look back at it, I feel like it put me up front in a sense to like talk more shit, where like Bobby and Joey would kind of kick back a little bit and quite not be quite as response or reactive, where I would just be like, all right, here we go. Like every fucking second there's a thing, I would like lash out, and but I started like also realizing like there was a sense of camaraderie in amongst like who we associated with. And so like when we went on tour early in the days with Jenny Piccolo, it felt like a family. And the thing that was really funny is Al, the drummer, was a third degree black belt. So it kind of emboldened me to talk shit to people a little bit more, knowing that he could just annihilate people if I needed him to. And luckily it never really got to that point, but there was like stories of Jenny Piccolo being on tour where they were like Denny's and there were Nazi skinheads, and there was like three people in Jenny Piccolo, and there were four Nazi skinheads, and James and Chris from Jenny Piccolo would fight one, and Al would fight three, And then so I kind of was like, oh, I got to just kind of realize who's in my like, make sure Al's in my peripheral vision if I need to start fighting someone. And it wasn't like I wanted to just start fighting someone, but it was like I'll go to town on someone if they're fucking talking shit about people of color or women or trans or queer folks that are at shows that are our friends. Like it'll fucking happen. Like I'm not gonna let it be okay, and I don't really want it to result in violence, but I don't want those people to like our band, to be there at all. It's not for them. So there's that kind of element. And then later on, when we were toured with like Erebon Radar, those guys are all at the time, they were all so fully capable of being violent, and so there were times where like they would just fuck people up for me. It was justified, but there were points where I was like, you guys, you're gonna kill that person, you might want to stop, and then and then as soon as I would like kind of make them stop, the guy would get up and be like, you fucking faggots, and then I'm gonna go get my gun or whatever, and you're like, oh god, I should have let him just keep beating the guy up. So it was constantly like just a learning lesson, I think, on how to navigate. Now I know how to. I don't know. I mean, a lot of the times I think I fine tuned my sense of getting into violent scenarios with wit, and I know like that's the thing that really can piss you off. If you're violent and someone's outwitting you, what are you gonna do? If you don't have the wits and the smarts to shut someone up, you're gonna just physically shut them up, and that's what usually would happen. And not that I wanted it to, but it's just like, well, I'm just a little bit too witty for you, so you're gonna have to beat me up.
I could see that. I could feel like that's usually what gets people in trouble is they just know how to fire back, and someone's a total idiot and doesn't know what to say, and then they're like, "Well, now I'm gonna use my fist." You're like, "All right, that's pretty weak."
Yeah, and especially if you have a microphone and someone in the crowd saying some really stupid shit, you have the ability to just trash them. And what are they going to do? They're going to fucking kick your ass. That's it. There's been a couple times when we were wearing our uniforms and we had our, fully masked uniforms, and I would talk shit. And afterwards, this dude came up to me. He's like, "Where's the fucking bassist?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I'm just packing up his shit. I'm not sure."
Well, like, okay, so besides all the violence, I guess, so like when you guys like get together and start touring and stuff like that, like what was it for you that made you think like, oh, this is the band that I want to play with. This is the thing I want to do.
I just think it happened. Like it never was really thought out.
Or like, did you feel like you got the expression that you needed, like musically when you're playing bass and like writing songs? Like, did you say like these guys understand what I'm trying to do, or I understand what they're trying to do?
Yeah, but I think there was also an evolution of things too, because we started the band. Me and Bobby started the band with our original drummer Dave Astor. So that was before Joey and Gabe were even in the band. We had different members, and we went through a few lineups, and it was. I mean, initially we wanted to sound like Crossed Out. We missed that right off the bat, and we sounded like more. I don't even want to say what we sounded like in my mind because it's probably wrong, but it kind of had like a early Neurosis vibe or something on this split we did with Man is a Bastard, and then we did a split with Jenny Piccolo. The person that was one of the people that was singing in the band at the time had a Moog synthesizer, and that was very eye-opening to Bobby and I. And so we parted ways with two of our members, and me and Bobby and Dave were like, we're going to get a keyboard player. And so we got Jimmy Lavelle to play keyboards. And so it was a constant evolution of like, oh, this is what we want to do. These are who we want to work with. And we parted ways with Jimmy and got Joey. And when we got Joey, we also got Gabe as a second guitar player. And it was constantly like upgrading, I guess. I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to our previous members, but we were saying like, oh, let's take this to this other level or different level because this is where we want to go. And then eventually Dave quit and Gabe moved to drums, which was mind blowing to the rest of us that we were like,
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that in your Wikipedia. I was like, how the fuck? I mean, obviously someone can be well versed, but that's an interesting jump.
it's very interesting because Gabe is he was very capable of everything, which says a lot about that guy. But so yeah, it was just once we got to the four of us who are known as like the actual Locust now or whatever, or mostly, we kind of just knew, oh yeah, this is it. Like we figured it out, and then we were sort of for a long time like inseparable, and we all worked in this like very cohesive manner and kind of allowed each other to do what each other did best and did a thing, but never really like thought it out. It just kind of happened.
So what was the first release you guys do? Because I'm on Discogs right now, and I'm seeing there's the split with Jenny Piccolo, and is that your first release on a 7-inch or a single?
No, the first thing was the split with Man is the Bastard, which technically was the first Bastard Noise record. So that was, it's just called Locust.
Oh, yes, okay.
I think right after that we did the split with Jenny Piccolo 5-inch, and then we went right full, like we went to the like regular EP, regular LP, and then we did a split with Airborne Radar, and then we did a Flight of the Wounded Locust record, and then that was when we departed with Dave Astor, and Gabe moved over to drums, and then we did a split with Melt Banana, and then we moved on to being on Anti and released Plague Soundscapes and so on and so forth.
When you guys like first go in the studio and you're working with whoever's like recording you and the sound's so different. I mean, for me, I mean, that wasn't a lot of bands that seemed like that had the same sound as you guys back then. So when you go in and do this, was the person recording you kind of like, this is something new? Or are they thrown off a bit? Or were they just like, oh, fuck yeah?
Well, that's a good question. Great question. Because so when we recorded Plague Soundscapes, that was the first time we worked with a producer, and we worked with Alex Newport and the rest of our stuff that we had recorded from there on out. But before that, we never really worked with a producer, but we recorded with this guy named Jeff Forrest in San Diego at this studio called Double Time. And so Jeff was very unique because he was a musician and he played with like Weird Al, and he played with a bunch of different kind of bands. A lot of it I don't think was really our thing, but he, for whatever reason, recorded a lot of pretty legendary stuff. Like he recorded Unbroken and a lot of the Gravity stuff, like he did Click Attack Cotawi, Nancy Arrow, and probably, I don't even know, maybe Heroin, but he recorded like all of our friends' bands. And so he was great because he was great because I think he would like tolerate us sort of, and like for me, like we didn't really know what we were doing. So, and I'm pretty sure he was aware of that, but he also was like, this is weird shit, and I don't want to try to change anything. He kind of would just push record and like sort of tell us if we did it right or not, but it was never really like it never really fit into the category of producing. Again, I think he was the guy. We would just kind of go there and record with him, and he was strange like we were, and I think he got a kick out of how bizarre we were. And
what were you guys like in the studio? Like, are you like, some people get really locked in and they're really focused and like do it again, do it again, do it again, or they're like, that takes fine, or they get frustrated with each other. Like, what do you guys like in the studio at that time?
Everything for the most part, almost everything I recorded was with him up until Plague Soundscapes, with all the different projects I did. But so like always was try our best to be rehearsed going in there, because there was never a recording budget that allowed for a lot of mistakes. So all of those recordings have tons of mistakes from my perspective, but we never had a budget to go and redo. Like it was always like, that's good enough, let's move on. And it was never like tons of takes, which I regret now. And also too, we never could afford a reel. We were recording the 2-inch tape, so we would rent these reels from him. And I wish that we kept them, because it would have been nice to go back and fix some of that stuff. I mean, some of it we do still have, but some of it is just gone. It was always bizarre. Even for our first LP, the self-titled one on GSL. I think Sonny gave us like $800 to record. It was tight, and there's so many fucked up parts on that record, but
Just because you're saying that, and just because you said that, and I don't know if you don't want to say it, but is there a song where you're like, this always fucking annoys me, and it's part? Or it's like some people want to say it, and some people are like, well, I don't want to say it because people listen to it, and they're gonna hear that, and it's gonna ruin it.
yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, for one, it's hard to figure it out off the top of my head. Off the top of my head, we recorded this a Queen cover of the song Flash, and that was kind of a mess because it was right when that was the first session that we recorded with Gabe on drums, and so it was the Melt Banana split 7-inch, but we also did Flash, and I think we just couldn't get it right. It just didn't work out how we had envisioned it. But that's not a big deal, really, necessarily. But I think more so on stuff like the self-titled LP, there was a lot of issues with people's notes. Like the actual note that a stringed instrument is playing or a key. So there was like, we had keyboards, bass, and two guitar, and then that was just kind of like sometimes kind of a mess because we would play discordant chords and have a lot of effects pedals and stuff, and there were times where it's like that's probably not very correct. And so I mean, it's nothing specific, I guess. Like the big fuck ups, like the drums, like there was never like really like a big fuck up where you're like, oh, that drum beat is like, it was always like the little things like, hey, the vocals are a little off, or the vocals cut here or something, or I don't know, or this, or like the note is wrong, but it was never like a huge mistake or something where like that happened with previous bands that I was in with the same, at the same studio, but not with the Locust necessarily.
How much like vocal warm up do you have to do for before you go in? Are you straining your voice pretty aggressively?
I think maybe back then we definitely did. But we never really had any vocal warm up. I think about we probably should have, but back then we would all just sing like full throttle, and I think it took a while. Like when we started working with Alex Newport, we tried to kind of hone in and make our voices live with each other a little bit more harmoniously. And each one had its own like kind of like style where like before is everyone's just fucking screaming as hard as possible. And yeah, I mean, we would definitely burn our voices out in the studio with vocals. But also too, like a lot of times, when we were recording on, let's say, a 16 track or 24 track, we would end up using, on tape, we'd end up using a lot of tracks. So we'd have to grab one mic and get all three of us in there to sing at once or something, like on the earlier Locust stuff, it was pretty weird trying to do that shit and just running out of space on the tape to track stuff. So we would double up, and then that would mean like if one person fucked up, it screwed it up for everyone. So we all would have to redo it, and that would be where like someone's voice would get blown out, and you fry it. So we'd have to come back like the next day or something.
Real quick, if you're looking for an explainer video or someone to do motion graphics for your company, check out my company, drive80.com, and you can email me at mike@drive80.com for more info. That's all I got to say. So now back to the interview. Because I'm looking at the track listing, and I'm looking on Spotify at just the length of your songs, and your songs are like the majority less than a minute. Like how much? I don't know. I'm thinking of that and thinking of how many songs you're cramming in a recording session, and also if you're gonna go that hard. I can't tell if it was a longer song, it'd be less strain in your voice because you wouldn't be trying to push it all in at one time, or because it's so quick, you're like, I got to get in and out, so I got to really just fucking push my throat as much as possible.
Well, I mean, it's a good question, but I think like before we started working with Alex, it's sort of different because I think at that point, some of our songs, I mean, yeah, a lot of our songs are short, but after we started working with him, some of our songs were a little bit longer, where before I think they were never long. And we just wrote music differently. It made sense, but it was also kind of naively written. Like we probably could have, I don't know, like a song off the top of my head, like Cattle Mutilation probably could have been twice as long. Like we probably could have just played the song twice and it would have been fine. Probably considered better written or something. So we just didn't really know necessarily. I mean, it is what it is, and we wanted to do it like that. But in retrospect, I feel like we didn't really know how to like. I hate using this. I hate saying shit like this, but like we didn't really know how to write a song. But like, who's to say it is to write a song? Like it could be anything you want it to be. So there's that. But as far as like the length and the vocals and stuff, I mean, I think we just kind of by the time we got to start working with Alex Newport, there was a nuance to it, and he kind of knew like, hey, your voice is going, like stop, and then would figure out. Sorry, my dog's freaking out.
That's okay. He's testing his vocal range too.
I know but I think maybe wait, can you hold on? I think UPS might be here. Hold on one second. Hold on. Yeah, I think we were just trying to figure out like I mean, none of us ever really knew what the hell we were doing, to be honest. I still don't ever know what I'm doing, but I do know like for me personally, my vocal technique has changed. I found a way to sing less from my throat and more from my gut.
Was that through like vocal lessons, or did you just kind of figure that out on your own?
No, I never took vocal. I mean, I took one vocal lesson with my friend Paul from the band Quee, and I learned a lot. Maybe I took two lessons from him. I learned a lot, and then I just never did it again. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing ever.
Was there a reason why you guys wrote such short songs?
No, it just seemed
Like, did you seem like there's no point to like you're like we got in, we said we had to say, or musically did what we had to do. There's no need to have this extend any longer. Like, let's just fucking cut it off and like that's perfect for us.
kind of. It just felt like why would you want to play this any longer? And also we would just go hard and I think like mainly like drums and stuff. You're like okay, like that's enough for that for Gabe to play that or Dave or whoever was playing drums. Like that's enough. That's a minute, of just like pure endurance or whatever. Because those guys are like Dave, and when Dave was in the Locust and when Gabe was definitely on drums in the Locust, they didn't compromise. Like a lot of people that play blast beats will kind of compromise, and the snare hits are pretty light. And I think those guys were just fucking monsters. Gabe was a goddamn beast. Like it never was like he never got soft on his blast beats or any beat. I think that says a lot. And so you kind of look at it like, okay, I mean, when you're writing the song and you're like, oh shit, like I would get exhausted just watching him play a beat, or a song for, like if we were writing. But, also too, like later on when we wrote Safety Second, Body Last, which is just one 10-minute long song, that was like kind of strategically had breaks in it for drums, but also not really. And I mean, it was like in hindsight, there was maybe like some breaks for the drums, but also we were trying to experiment with texture and tension and release and have a little bit of movement in the songs and not have it be completely dense, which is what things were like before that. So there was a lot of things being taken into consideration as far as like musicianship and exploring a sort of sound, I suppose.
Like, can you guys hear? Because when you initially, if you really sit down and listen to what you guys do, you can hear what's happening. But from an outside perspective, when it's new, it's just fast, and you're like, "What the fuck did I just see?" So when you guys are writing the songs, like, can you tell? Like, do you know where the fuck you are in the song? Like when you're playing, like you're like, hold on, we're in the we're in the bridge now, or like you're in the wrong spot. Like, do you guys all know what's going on, or is it just chaos?
Yeah, for the most part. No. For the most part, it's kind of crazy. Like I don't necessarily know how we did it, but I'm like, how the hell did we have that much intense structure or like it's absurd structure or information packed into this thing? And like, there are all these little nuances, but I mean, I think a lot of it was just like we would start ripping into a song and there was a lot of muscle memory because we would rehearse over and over and over and over, the songs. And there are times where it's like one time on a riff, there's a little stutter here. Make sure you have that little stutter, or there's I don't know, whatever, an extra junt here randomly, and it's weird, or there's no actual repetitive structure on this piece. It's one fluid long thing. Remember it, and so you you would remember it, and that was just how it had to be. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it seems like shit. That's impressive, and sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know. People play way more complicated things than we ever came up with. So
Well, it's like when I'm watching some of the videos and you're playing like these bass lines and Bobby's playing the guitars and then Gabe's playing drums. It's just you could see that you guys are like playing fucking scale, not even scale. I guess quote unquote scales. Like you go up and down the neck and shit like that. And I'm like, there's something happening here where from when I'm watching it, it's like watching Dillinger's Escape Plan. Watching you guys, like it's so fast. I'm just I play bass and I played in a punk band, but I was never anywhere near as fucking as technical as you guys. It's just wild for me to watch it and just think like, you hear when people play tennis and someone hits the ball at them, it's like 90 miles an hour, but then they like a half a second hit it back and they just see it in slow motion where they just know where to hit it back. It's like almost like, do you see the songs kind of that way?
kind of, because a lot of it isn't even thought out. Like again, like if there's like a weird time signature or a extra like a little stutter, like I said, or something. I'm not thinking like, oh, here it comes. It just happens naturally. So the tennis analogy might be exact because the first snare hit happens and the song goes, and I'm not thinking like, what's the next part? Or the things that I think about for me when I'm playing is mainly it would be like it's not on the bass. It'd be like my feet. Am I hitting the right pedal? Those are the one thing. That's the one thing I'd have to. So the things that would happen on my bass would kind of happen a little bit more organically, where like, or I guess subconsciously or something, where like my feet is the one that I'm like, hey, I got to push this button or turn this off or whatever, and then of course like, oh yeah, let's wear a mask and fucking hinder our eyesight so we don't even really, yeah, just to make it a little bit more complicated.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's not practical.
When you guys like started playing your live shows, or when did you feel you as a four piece really locked in as a live show? Was it before or after you started wearing uniforms?
Well, when we were a four piece, we only played a handful of shows in uniforms, and it's funny because the first time we played as a four piece, like with Gabe, so we were a four piece with Jimmy Lavelle, but then Gabe joined and we became five, and then when Dave quit and Gabe went to drums, we became back to four. But the first show we played as a four piece, as people mainly know the Locust as, was at this film screening of the movie Cecil Be Demented, and it's a John Waters film that had some of our music in it. So we played in the movie theater in diapers, and that was kind of the first time. I think in retrospect, that was like, hey, we should probably dress like a band, and so the diapers thing was like a little bit like a nod to John Waters. But I think we only played like maybe four shows in regular clothes as a four piece before we played in uniforms, and the uniforms were kind of a mistake, but not a mistake, an accident, because this magazine came out that was talking all this shit about us called Hit It or Quit It. It was really frustrating, and it just came out, and that night we were playing in San Francisco, and we saw these fuzzy vests at this thrift store. There was four fuzzy vests, and we're like, hey, let's buy those, because the people were making fun of our clothes. And so we wore fuzzy vests, and we went to Japan the next day, and it kind of made a lot of sense being in Japan playing with fuzzy vests on. We came back like kind of juiced up and ready to like wear uniforms, and then it just took a minute to mutate into what had become like our full uniforms.
I find it so funny that people made fun of your clothing, because I'm looking at this video of you guys playing at Gilman Street in '99, and you're not wearing anything. You guys are wearing just regular clothes, and this became the fashion of
Yeah.
majority of everyone in the early 2000s. So it's so funny to me that people are like, "Wear your Jinko jeans, bro." You know, like it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah. So people made fun of us because our clothes were like fitting. Like we didn't have big pants. We had like normal fitted pants.
You became the fucking fashion of early 2000s. Literally, that's exactly what everyone dressed like.
The pants and our hair, but like I don't know. Like I mean, I think out of the band, like Gabe and I are the only ones that have like kind of weird hair, maybe. But everyone just seemed to want to talk shit about us, and then it was coming from like a lot of straight edge people, or like people that were like just basic, like into basic hardcore. It was never like the punks. There was never someone talking shit that had a mohawk and a leather jacket. It was always just like a jerk that was into hardcore, and or like indie rock. Like there was this band Jejune that was like really into talking shit about the way we looked.
Oh, really? I actually interviewed Joe from that band.
Yeah, I love Joe. He's great. I think they're awesome. I love all those people in the band. But at the time, they were in this magazine and talking all this shit.
Yes, he talks about that. He mentions that in the interview, and he said, I said something, and he goes, it was taken completely off of how I said it, and he's like, and then the Locust got pissed off at me because of that comment. I have to go back and say, yeah, because he was like, it was taken completely wrong, and he's like, and they fucking hated me because of it, or something like that.
No. Well, Joe and Gabe were previously before the Locust in a band together and stuff too. So I think it kind of felt like, I think we were just kind of like, fuck these people, and it wasn't. I mean, I don't want to give. I like Joe, and I don't want to give him too much credit though, because the majority of the shit talking was from like, again, it was like straight edge people. I don't know what it was, but they just fucking hated us. I don't know. I think when you get a lot of people being mean and talking shit to you, you're just gonna be reactionary, and we were in like a fun way.
Well, do you think with like more bands came out that had an aggressive sound, like you figure, you guys are out, and then Cave In comes out, and they're not as as like hyper fast as you guys, but they still had that aggressive sound. Coalesce comes out, has a totally different sound, like voice, and then Dillinger Escape Plan. Like when those bands start coming out, does the scene kind of soften up a little bit around you guys and invite you in a little bit more?
I don't know because man, I was gonna say something and I forgot what it was, but the Dillinger Escape Plan thing is pretty interesting because we ended up doing a tour with them, like a full U.S. and Canada tour, and it was really rad. It was a great one of the best tours we did. But the thing that was odd to us was, and I don't mean any disrespect to Dillinger Escape Plan members, but a lot of their fan base were those kind of like jock assholes. And so there was a really odd negative reaction from the audience where like there was a lot of like homophobic shit. Like people that were like their fans were like, you heard the word faggot being thrown around a lot. And like people kind of getting a little bit too aggressive towards the people that were there to see us. And that was really weird. I think maybe, and I could be wrong, Ben can probably correct me, but I think that they were trying to steer in a different direction away from that aggressive macho shit. And they were like, let's bring the Locust on tour. And it was cool. Like we were all about it. And it made it really challenging. There was a lot of challenging elements in that tour. That was one of them. Dealing with some of the audience it was a little bit too aggressive for our taste, but also challenging in the sense that like they made us step it up as far as like touring with a band like that was they were very precise and their musicianship was flawless. So we would watch them like go nuts on stage and jump off of shit and stuff. And so we were not able to do that because we were all tethered to a microphone and a pedal board. So we were trying to figure out how to like articulate the Locust in context to making our performance and our musicianship even better. So we got even weirder. So we would, we kind of like acted more like Devo or like robots or whatever. And like we couldn't like jump off of shit, we couldn't like do the things that Dillinger was known for. So we went a different direction and we went full force in that direction. They did their thing and it was really nice. Like there was no competitive element. It was just like, hey, you guys are inspiring us, we're inspiring you, and vice versa. And it was good. But beyond the band members, like the audience was like pretty fucked. And that wasn't the only time. And it was like, it's not, I don't want to, and again, like, let me just throw another example into the mix. When we ended up touring with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, we toured them in the States first, and it was very successful and great. And we fell in love with each other, and we were all like best friends, and it was awesome. And so they asked us to go to Europe with them. And when we got to the UK, people were so violent against us, so much to where we one night had to be escorted out by the police because there was going to be a riot. And people wanted to kill us, and it was really insane that the Yeah Yeah Yeahs fans wanted to kill us. They were not the like hardcore like macho kind of crowd that Dillinger would have been known for. So, but it was only in the UK. As soon as we got into mainland Europe, like in Germany and Spain and Italy and stuff, it was totally fine again. I don't know what it is that the Locust does to people, but I am also grateful for the negative reaction in the sense that I would rather them react in some way than be indifferent, because I think if they're indifferent, then maybe we weren't doing what we should have been doing.
Well, I mean, it's not like you guys play a set and you have the softest sound that's invoking like this calmness in a crowd. The sound's aggressive and just general, so it kind of gets your blood pressure up a little bit.
Yeah, but if like the Dillinger thing is one thing, but like with the Yeah Yeahs, it was like they invited us to tour with them. Can you just please not be a dick to us for a half an hour? Is it that much to ask you? But like it was bad where they were like throwing full pints of beer at us, and like glasses of beer. Like that hurts when it hits you.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I'm not saying you deserve that in any mean, but like by what I said, it's not like, oh, we're playing this fast song, people should be pissed off. It's like the sound itself creates more of an aggression in you, but doesn't give people the right to be like, now we're gonna throw fucking pints of beer at you.
But I don't know if the music. I mean, it's definitely tense music, and I wouldn't really even know if I would go as far as to say aggressive in a sense. I think absurd, and I don't know. I don't think it makes you. I don't think that you could say like it's loud and fast, and therefore it makes me aggressive.
Yeah, the tension part, that's more of what I wanted to say. It's like it tenses you up.
Sure.
Which aggression does too, but aggression's more like you act out. Intense is like you internalize it more.
I guess, but if you're watching a horror movie, don't start stabbing people in the movie theater. You know, it's like just I don't know. I just think like just chill the fuck out and like watch it and like and then don't like it. Like don't just don't like it.
No, it's totally, like I said, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean in a way like, oh, you guys totally brought it on. It's like, no, that's not what I meant at all. So I don't think anyone should get their ass kicked for doing their art or their creativity in front of people in any fucking way.
Yeah, well, story of my life.
Do you think like you're very like adamant about saying uniforms instead of costumes? When people say costumes, does that annoy you?
Oh yeah, but it's fine. Because costumes is like Halloween. Like we wore uniforms. We all looked the same, and we did it every single time we played a show. A costume would be like, this is theater, and we're gonna like dress up. I'm gonna dress up like this, and you dress up like that. Like no, it's just we were like it was a uniform. I mean, I think that we had kind of adopted that term uniform from Erebon Radar, who wore uniforms. They literally were in like work, like Dickies work uniforms, and we were on tour with them, and we're like, fucking, they wear uniforms. We should wear uniforms, and then that was it. They were called uniforms. And also, maybe, maybe it's us being like sensitive or something, but it just seems like a little bit more serious if you wear a uniform opposed to a costume. Like we weren't like fucking around, and like it wasn't arts and crafts and fun zany shit because like I mean, it happened before when I was in this band, the Crimson Curse, where like everyone just kind of wore goofy ass shit, and the audience all fucking came out also wearing goofy shit or nude, like totally nude, like that was a thing. But that was like costumes, It's like, oh yeah, someone's dressed as an orange pylon, or someone's dressed as a nurse, or someone's like, I don't know what the fuck that person's dressed as, or their dick is hanging out. Like that's sort of like costuming, where like we were just in the uniform. But you can call it what you want. I don't really care. You could say whatever you want.
Well, I just saw it in certain interviews when you'd say that, you'd say uniform, so I wanted to be like, okay, I wonder if he doesn't like that term, so I want to make sure I don't say that. Not like I thought you'd be pissed off, but I was like, I wonder if there's something there. But it sounds like they're kind of little bit's there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just like, hey, like this is just how we see it. Like we treat it very seriously, I guess we would say.
yeah. But also too, like a good example, when I would say bands like Devo, I mean, was that a costume or a uniform? I don't know. But what about a band like the Ramones? Like they looked like they had fucking uniforms on, like they all looked exactly the same, and that looked sick. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just a term, I guess.
So kind of going back to the live show thing, and you said something that I actually thought of. I thought of this every time I've seen you guys, is that you have so much, you have pedals and your equipment. It's like you all of this like tight unit on stage where you can't really move. Did you sometimes feel like you wanted to be more free flowing and have more space to move around and go off, or did you not mind having just that confined bubble that you created for yourself on stage?
What do you mean? What do you mean? I mean, because it was never.
Meaning like how like you said Dillinger, they can move all around the stage, and you're like, I had all my pedals and shit here, so we kind of were stuck because the next chord or verse, whatever, like I had to flip, So it's like you couldn't really leave your spot because you had to keep hitting the pedals.
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty early on. I mean, because we never really had just a singer, or the guitar player was never just the guitar player. Everyone was always doing two things, and so for a while we didn't have a lot of pedals, like at the early stages or whatever. But like we were always kind of tethered to like playing an instrument and vocals, so you were kind of like double duty, stuck in a spot for the most part, and then add in like a giant pedal board, and then you're just fucked because you have all this shit you have to do constantly. So it was kind of like the performance aspect I mean, the Dillinger thing was very interesting because they are great performers, and they are great, like their performance is something that's just outstanding. But they also, when we toured with them, toured with like a light rig or whatever, and so we were just kind of like, fuck man, they have all this lighting stuff, and they go crazy. It kind of just made us consider the performance aspect. Okay, now we have to get this gigantic banner because we can't afford lighting, but we can get a banner, and then we already had uniforms. So we just, I think, inherently kind of honed in on the style of the performance and how we presented it. And then there's a lot of things, man. Actually, there's a lot of weird shit that came up because when we toured with Phantomas, that was weird because Dave Lombardo had this gigantic Phantomas drum kit, and it was always set up, I think, stage left, they wouldn't strike the drums. So there was a little odd amount of space on stage for us when we would play. So we kind of were forced into this, like, I don't know, standing on top of each other situation a lot. And then eventually that kind of morphed into the fact that we don't have a front person. Why not just put Gabe up front? Because that guy is the raddest person in the band to watch. He's actually the most physically active in the band because he's just playing drums. He's not pushing the pedals and singing and stuck standing still behind a thing, you know. So like we just decided to put Gabe up front and make us stand in a line, and that actually helped us a lot too with like our peripheral vision and being able to see, you know, like the sort of like minutia and like, or like this sort of really small things that you have to pay attention to, like, oh, there's this one bell like on the right, he hits the bell on this one part, and that's the change of the riff and so on. Throwing him up front and just setting up in a straight line made things look unique and also made it more practical for us as far as like performing, I suppose.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because on the bunch of videos and stuff, the drummer's always kind of all over the place, and even well, I mean, the Gilman Street video made sense just because the stage is like a foot wide or something. Yeah, that was one of my questions to wonder, like, what made you guys think to move the drummer around, but you just answered it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, also like, I don't know, when I would be able to like watch a video of our band, I would just want to watch Gabe. So we just thought put Gabe up front, and then it helps us all see him because especially, you know, since I mean for me that's the rhythm section, me and him. So I just really want to see what he's doing, and like I would set up kind of right by his floor tom, a little bit behind it. I mean, it sounds like a little woo-woo or maybe silly, but I feel like we shared a lot of energy, and I could just I think we communicated through music that way. There was I felt like when him and I would play next to each other, it was always there was just no it was so cohesive. There was no time for fuck ups because we were just locked in. If he was behind me on a drumizer like Dillinger's drummer was, or whoever, you know, it's just I'd have to like turn around and look at him. I didn't have the ability to do that because I needed to face forward to sing and to push the pedals.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I was wondering if you have the drummer in front of you, you literally kind of makes you tighter because you can see visualize
Oh
the
yeah,
changes.
watching his right hand go up, and when it would actually connect with the drum, would just made it so much easier for me to lock in and play exactly what he was doing.
For some reason, when Plague Soundscapes came out, I don't know why I thought you guys got signed to Epitaph. Was that ever a thing? Were you ever talking to Epitaph?
So we signed to Anti, which is a subsidiary of Epitaph.
There we go. Okay,
Yeah,
that was it.
and that's because like everyone shit on us for signing to Epitaph, which is kind of funny. Then Dillinger and Converge did so.
Epitaph reaches out, you guys sign, and then you get feedback, and you're like, "Hey, can we go on the subsidy? Like, how does that work out?"
We met Brett Gerwitz, and he was amazing, and we kind of all loved each other. Like we thought he was so fantastic. I love that guy so much, and I really love Epitaph. But as critical as the world is that we came from, we knew we were going to get shit on, and it was really hard for us because at the time it was bizarre. Something was going on, and like we kind of were getting. We needed to move on to a bigger label that had a budget because when we were on GSL, there was never a budget. We wanted to record and have the drums sound really good, and we wanted to record and just have a good sounding record, which not that our other stuff didn't sound good, it's just we were always rushed, like I said. And so like someone from Warner Brothers reached out to us, and that was weird. And then Brett reached out to us, and we're like, you know, it's an independent label, like we're really interested in working with Brett, but it's just I don't know if we could align ourselves with a label that put out, you know, Rancid and The Offspring, and that was really hard for us. And so we were like, well, what about Anti? Because Anti has all this cool ass shit on the label that we feel like we could relate to, but to the rest of the world, including Brett, he didn't see that like connection or whatever. But you know, we were like Tom Waits and Nick Cave and you know all this really rad shit that was on Anti. All the and avant-garde kind of like not because we were like really kind of just thinking the term punk is dumb, you know, punk rock is like just stupid. I mean, I get it. I think there's a difference between punk and punk rock, and we wanted to go. We felt that anti was punk and Epitaph was punk rock, and so we just kind of put up a fight with Brent, and eventually he caved in and let us do it on anti.
That's kind of cool though. You get to sit there with Brett Kurwitz, and be like, "Hey man, it's cool. You want to sign us to this band? You're in this band that's been around forever and has been influenced a lot of bands, but we kind of want to go in this direction." He's like, and you're like, "No, seriously, like we have to do this." And he's like, okay."
It was crazy because I think I wish that we would have. I wish I would have like personally wish I would have conducted myself a little bit better because I think I was way too critical. And I love Brett and I grew up listening to Bad Religion. I think that they are an extremely relevant band in the history of punk rock. My criticisms were with some of the stuff on the label, and I think as like all four of us just kind of had a lot of reservations, and it was weird because it was tech. It's on Epitaph. I mean, it's the same fucking label. It just looked different. But regardless, our idea or our reasoning backfired because we immediately got shit on by people. And before Plague Soundscapes came out, everyone was like, "You're gonna sound like pop punk band. You guys are fucking sellouts. You're posers. You're assholes. Like all this shit." And it was like, "All right, well, just wait because the record will be our best record, and that we had done at that point. And like, fuck you." And it was better than all of our other stuff we had released yet or up to that point. And it was haters are going to be haters, I guess. But the thing is, like, as soon as we signed to Anti slash Epitaph, that Dillinger Mike Patton record came out, and then right after that, Converge signed, and it was like, man, are all those guys getting shit on? Like, I don't know. I don't think they were, but maybe so. But I feel like we kind of like, I don't know. I don't, whatever. It was just a bummer. I just the negative shit we got from people sucked, and I did not that I wanted Dillinger or Converge to have to deal with that, but it's like, why are people such just dicks to us? Maybe they were dicks to them too, but regardless. But right after that, like I was in another band called Some Girls, and then eventually I was in this band called Retox, and both of those bands signed to Epitaph, and I proper, and I have no problem with the label whatsoever. I think it's an amazing label. They allowed us to do great things. I apologize if anyone from Epitaph listens to this because I think collectively all three of those bands are all in debt to them. But
Do you know Double J?
Double J, no, I don't think so.
He's a creative director there. He works at Epitaph. Cool guy. He was just like he went on a lot of he was involved in the scene back then. Now he works at Epitaph, so I know he listens to this, but I'm pretty sure he understands. I'm gonna speak for him. I'm pretty sure he understands what you're saying.
Well, I mean, everyone there that we knew or know still, like at Epitaph, I love and I appreciate what it is. I think it's a great label, and I think they're great people. And I just don't know that I can relate to a lot of the artists on it, but I know that I can relate to a lot of them that are on it. So yeah, I think it's cool. They really opened the doors for the Locust and allowed for a lot of things to happen that I think we would never have accomplished if it wasn't for them.
So kind of the point where people were giving you shit and stuff. What were you guys like on tour? Like outside of playing shows? Like did you live this kind of intense lifestyle that matched the music, or were you not like that?
No, I mean, um,
Because I'm gonna bring up the ask questions about the Jerry Springer thing.
oh yeah,
And then the Elvis thing where Bobby pisses on him or your keyboardist pisses on him. So it's like you see that, and then you hear the music, like you almost feel like you guys had this, intensity with you outside of playing shows. Like you kind of have this, yeah, we the sound that we make, we kind of not live that way, but it kind of we kind of carry that with us.
Well, what would that be? Like, what would you think? Like, we were just like bizarre, like drug addict. I don't know. Like, what? I don't know what it would. I don't know. Like, just like fuckheads. I don't know what that would like.
No, just like I guess mischievous, I guess would be the word. Like kind of not like all the time crazy, but sometimes you're like, because I have there was a let me see, I did an interview with Chris and Todd from the Gray AM, and they were telling some story. I don't think it was like a crazy story, but they're watching porn with you guys. Do you remember this story?
No, I don't. I don't.
That's nothing crazy about that at all, but just
Well, tell me the story because I don't know. I don't know. Anyhow, what can you tell me the story?
I think it was like something about what you guys were watching. But again, it wasn't like anything crazy. It was just like anytime, I guess, in interviews I've done where people would say like, "Oh, we toured the Locust, we played Locust." I'm always like, "What was that like?" I'm like, because I'm so interested in what these guys are like. So now that I'm talking to you, I just got to try to say, because I think people listening are trying to get like kind of a behind the scenes of what you guys are like. So, and kind of maybe dismiss, like I said, the lore of what surrounds you guys.
Okay, well that's interesting because I've only like watched. I think I've only watched like two pornos in my life. One was with Tattoo from Fantasy Island, and the other one was called Edward Penis Hands. And I'm pretty sure I didn't watch it with those people. I don't know them. No offense to them, but I don't know if I have ever heard that band. But anyhow, there's this guy that I think is a piece of shit, who was an Airborne Radar, Jeff. He wrote this book, and in his book he wrote this story about how Airborne Radar was at my house. I barely like remember what he wrote. I should probably reread it. He was writing about this story about how like I think he was trying to like frame me as like a businessman, and there was this orgy happening at my house, and I came in the room and I was like, everyone calm down. I'm fucking crunching numbers or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's really funny because I don't really think there was like an orgy maybe at my house. And I never would like go in and like tell people to knock it off because I'm a businessman, because that's definitely not true either. So I was like, I don't know, that guy published a book and everyone read that and thinks that's what happened, and it didn't. So I mean, I think we were just pretty like normal people. We would like go on tour, and then we would like try to eat healthy food or do something cool and like hang out with our friends. Maybe like some of those guys would want to go to a bar, smoke weed or whatever, but it was never like something crazy. Like it was never. I mean, I remember like I don't know who in the band had it, but we had that Motley Crue book, that
The dirt.
yeah, and we had that in the van, and we're just like, this is fucking crazy, and it seemed fake. And then I remember like someone, maybe I don't know if it was like Jason Hammerker or someone saying like, oh, you have that book, yeah, it's like just like you guys. We're like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like that is crazy shit. So no, no is none of that happened, and we were just like pretty run of the mill stuff happened. For the most part, we just kind of wanted to hang out with our friends in whatever city that was in, and depending on who we were on tour with. Like after a while, we were trying to, or for the most part, we were trying to tour with our friends. So it's when you're out with, I don't know, someone like Bratmobile or Reversal of Man or Cattle Decapitation, you want to like go just do fun shit with them. I mean, sometimes it could be like debauchery, I guess, but like for the most part, we were just kind of like wanted to just have fun and like make the best of our time on this planet. And that was it. I don't know. It was never just like insane shit. I mean, there were times where it was like insane. Like we played with one of those Altamars parties in England where like, I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they'd be curated by one band, and then which meant like all of your fucking friends were there, and then everybody in the bands and the people would stay on this like in this like campground area. And so it was just insane shit all the time. But then you would leave that. It was like a very cool curated festival that allowed for a lot of insane, total debauchery shit. But like once that was done, like you go back to regular touring. Oh, we have to drive for 8 hours tomorrow. So like after the show, are you gonna go fucking berserk, or are you gonna go to bed? It's like, well, we're gonna go to bed.
Where did you guys have the best crowds that would show up for you?
All the good cities, all the big, cool, good cities. But with that being said, sometimes we'd play these like little nooks, or like the I guess people in the industry call them B-list cities, and those, when you have people come out that are hungry for shit, that's always rad too. There was always like an element of something special or magical depending on what it was. I mean, best crowds obviously would be like San Diego, because it's San Diego, it's where we live, or LA or whatever. But there's always the best crowds in certain places or certain venues. It's those would always have it too. Playing places that were special. Like when we played The Smell in LA, it was going to be a 10 out of 10. There's like no way around that.
What makes it a 10 out of 10 for you?
Well, just like the energy, I suppose, and the connectivity with everybody there amongst each other and with the band, and just like overall. But also, I think a lot of it too, like best shows would be a killer lineup where you're not like stuck. Like for a while, I remember we were going on tour, and like we'd be by ourselves, and the promoter would put like 3 metal bands on, or fucking metal hardcore bands, and you're like, this sucks. We want it to be diverse. I don't know, the last tour that the Locust did was with all of our friends, like Shit Coffins and Sonito de la Frontera, Therapy. Like we were just really into playing with our friends. And a lot of times that didn't maybe translate that well to the audience, but it translated to us, and that's all that we really cared about. So those are always the best shows. I mean, we played Great American Music Hall. It was probably one of our best shows. It was our next, I think it was our next to last show that we had ever played, and it was probably our best show.
So did you ever have like someone, a crowd, like jump on the stage and grab the mic and like start singing them with you guys?
No. I mean, they would knock the mics over sometimes and shit like that, but no one ever really sang along into a mic. Because I mean, I think for the most part, they knew we needed them positioned very specifically in our faces, you know.
We have very polite fans. Very courteous fans.
Well, I mean, but if you think about like the way we were set up with the drums up front, they didn't really seem inviting. If you're gonna stage dive, you know, and you're gonna get on stage, there's usually a big kind of like open gap where the singer is, and you can kind of get up there. Like this didn't. There's really what it just didn't. Yeah, I mean, people would stage dive, of course, but they kind of just stuck to getting in and off and not fucking with our shit. Because as soon as they fucked with our shit, the song had to stop. Essentially, you know.
So okay, so there was two things where you that are on, like I said, online where it's interview based, and one of them is this Extreme Elvis interview. This was like 2002 or something. What was this guy? Like, what was that whole thing?
Well, okay, so that's interesting. That's a very interesting person. At the time of that interview, we didn't know him, and a friend of ours said, "Hey, I want to set you up for this interview for this public access thing." And we're like, "Okay, whatever." We didn't know him. We knew his friend, and so it was really interesting because he came in to the green room and like just had a bad attitude right away. Gabe and Joey were kind of wasted by that time, which helped. And then I was sober and just trying to like facilitate this interview to give the guy some kind of answers because Joey and Gabe were not giving him any kind of answer he was looking for. And so I was just like, man, fuck this guy, but all right, I'll answer these questions and I'm gonna just be a dick and have a bad attitude. And it was kind of crazy and it got pretty bad because also too in the green room were like a bunch of our friends who were like, well, fuck this guy. And it was bad. It was like very, very negative and not fun. And yeah, Joey ended up peeing on him at one point. Like he was just a fucking dick. We threw him out. Like we actually ended up like throwing him out of the green room, and that was that. And then I remember going upstairs after the show was over, and he was sitting at this table upstairs, and he was like immediately he was like, "Oh, Justin, great job. That was awesome. Thank you so much. That was so much fun. We nailed it." I was like, "What the fuck?" And so I was like, "Oh, this guy fully had a shtick. Like he is like this Elvis impersonator that's like Gigi Allen or something, you know." So like because he would like shit on the stage and stuff like that. So I didn't know any of this, and I didn't realize that he was a persona. And so I think we just thought like this guy is such a fucking jerk. Like this sucks. And then as soon as we figured out that he was like performing for the video, you know, for the interview, like everything changed, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's a genius. I love him. He had actually introduced us once at at Gilman Street, and like, oh man, like pulled his pants down and dropped his pulled this. He was wearing a diaper that was full of shit, and like was gonna put it in my face, but then he chucked it at the audience, and like it was pretty fucking crazy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was just a performance thing, you know. And he's great. He was so witty and very very smart. And yeah, I think that character. I think he killed off the character, but he's still around. I really appreciate what he did. I hope that he knows that he became a legend for many reasons. But yeah, I heard this story that he played his last show as Extreme Elvis because he would do like Elvis covers and stuff. And it was like during the Gulf War, one of the first ones. There's been many Gulf Wars, but when the U.S. invaded Iraq, and everyone was like at a show, and they were like, take a shit. Like they wanted him to shit on stage, you know. And he was like, man, there's a fucking unjust war happening, paid by U.S. taxpayer dollars. We're destroying this country. You know, it was like when there was George W. Bush was saying there was weapons of mass destruction, and I think Extreme Elvis just like lost it, and he was like not lost it in a negative way. It was just like fuck these people, and there's no point in doing this. And like he shaved his head on stage and like just said he's dead, and that was it, and like left and like never performed again. I don't know if that's true or
Wow.
not, but it sounds like a pretty righteous move. I don't know. Yeah, that guy's great.
You would never think that too. When you watch the video, the whole interview is online. It's on YouTube.
He was the only one that knew that he like. We just thought this guy's a dick and for reals, and he wasn't. But if we would have known that he wasn't, it would have been dealt with differently, I'm sure.
Even you saying that, I'm just remembering watching it. Like he really leans into it because I was like, this guy sucks.
He totally sucked.
Like he was being such a dick to you, and you guys are looking at you like you're like, what the fuck is your problem? And then because there was a previous interview that you guys did on some music TV show, and the guy asked you about Elvis, I was like, oh, what is that? So I go online, I find the thing, and I'm watching this because I think he says to Joe, was that the keyboard player at the time? Joey.
Joey.
He's
Yeah,
Joey's
Joey.
like, yeah, he's like, yeah, you peed on him, and he's like, but he seemed like mad when he answered. He's like, yeah, he's like, he had it coming. So he seemed like he was still pissed off at the guy, and so I'm like, so then watching that, it made sense because you see him piss on him, and then you're saying it was an all act. It blows my mind because it's just like, wow, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that Joey was wasted because I doubt he would have. I mean, he probably would have peed on him regardless. But I think that might have been why Extreme Elvis was like that was a great performance because normally he wouldn't like he wanted to get that he wanted to get a reaction out of us and we gave him an equivalent part. Like we did our part. Joey peeing on him is up there with like Extreme Elvis's antics. Like he fucking pissed on his leg. Yeah, I think like from a performance perspective, it made a lot of sense, and I think I'm pretty sure like Extreme Elvis was like grateful that he was dealing with people that were up for the challenge. Like it wasn't like a thing where they were like, oh my god, Joey peed on a guy. Like we just were like, yeah, he pissed on him, get the fuck out of here. And so that was that. I just don't know if a lot of people would have had the guts to do something like that. I suppose.
Was he nice? Let you hang out with him afterwards? And
Oh, he was amazing. He's like so sweet and really, really smart, and he was very knowledgeable about everything. It was great.
I was not expecting the story to go in that direction. I like that. Not like I expect to be like, oh, fuck talking shit, but it's just kind of a cool. I was not expecting that at all. So to that point in that interview, there's a girl in the room with you, and I'm watching the Jerry Springer show, and I'm like, I think it's the same girl that's on stage. Was she the same girl? Was your girlfriend?
Yeah, that's my friend Alicia. Yes, she ran 3-1G with me at the time. I don't know why she was at that show. I think she had like been dating someone that lived in San Francisco or something. Maybe that's why she was at that show. But yeah, she was on Jerry Springer, and that was just because at the time the person that called the Jerry Springer show was made up a story based on the four people at the house, and that was the four of us that went on the show. So
Amazing. Were you guys on tour when you went there, or did they fly you out?
yeah, they flew us out there. I was actually on tour with the Crimson Curse when it aired, which was strange timing. Yeah, they flew us out there for that. But I was playing this festival, the More Than Music Fest in Michigan, with the Crimson Curse the day before it aired, and so it was a really easy way to tell the people of this festival, hey, watch Jerry Springer tomorrow, and so everyone watched, and I think that helped because that's pre-internet, so it definitely helped motivate people to go see something on TV at that time.
Did you did you ever watch the show prior to that or no?
Oh yeah, I mean it was on. I mean it was on my house at the house the day that Scott Byben, who was on the episode, me called Jerry. So it was like just on TV, and so he was like, "Hey, let's call." And so he called and made up a story on the spot. But yeah, I mean I watched it. I had some friends on it occasionally, and I was always a fan of like the stupid, absurd shit, like I don't know, the KKK people throwing cake around or something, like all the stuff that they would get on, at the height of it was interestingly enough something that to watch, I suppose.
I heard that you had said that, or read that you said that the security guard like beat you up because you spit on the ground or something because you got hit.
Yeah, they kind of roughed me up a little bit. It was this manager of the like the stage manager, and then the off-duty PD that worked there threatened me, and they threw me on the ground and dragged me down this hallway, and like were threatening me for, in their terms, they said I disrespected their house, and I was like, man, I've seen people piss and shit on your stage. Like I thought I got fucking punched in the face, and I thought I was bleeding. Or I mean, I did get punched in the face, but I was like, I thought I was bleeding, and I just blew the snot, and they like couldn't handle it. So
Got it. So from So from the I lost my place here. So from Plague Landscape, Jesus Christ, Plague Soundscapes until present day. Like when did you guys slow down and stop touring so much?
I mean, I think since like the start of the band up until I don't know, remember, I think it was like 2008 or something. It was right after New Erections came out, and we had toured a shitload on that cycle, like on that album or whatever. And I think what kind of made us take a pause for a minute was we had done a couple tours that were just, I don't know, they were pretty tiring. Like we toured with I don't want to say the bands, but we just toured with bands that we weren't a good match with. It just got to us, and we decided to take a pause. And I think people, I don't know, I mean, people like kind of didn't seem to care, and it just seemed it just wasn't that great to tour with that band. So we just took a break, and then in that point, Gabe ended up having his first child, and obviously that sort of changed his outlook on touring. And I think it's just a lot of things kind of came up in life, and so we just had like a big pause for a while. And then occasionally, I mean, we'd always like see each other and stuff, but then occasionally we would jam, and then it just took us a minute to kind of get back into the swing of things. And we did right around the pandemic, start of the pandemic. And then when the lockdown opened up, we played some more shows and stuff.
How was the Head Wound City? Jesus Christ. How was that whole experience?
That was great too, but it was like I think everybody had a lot going on in that band. And then again, I think it was the time of Gabe, starting a family, and it was just he wasn't as available as I think a lot of us thought he would be. And so it just kind of fizzled out, which was a bummer because we put a lot of work into that band. And I think it could have been pretty cool. And maybe it will, maybe like people will like it in like 10 years or something. But at the time, it just seemed like it wasn't as received as we thought it would be, I suppose. It's such a weird thing to say. I kind of go into everything with very low standards and expectations, and I'm never really let down. But I think maybe the other members thought it would have been like something more substantial and popular. And I don't think I shared the same expectations that they did, but it happened and it was fun, and I really love it. I love that band, and I love the music, and everybody in the band was they're my brothers. I love them so much. So it was cool to do that. It's just a shame that it was such a short-lived thing. But with that being said, that also might make it kind of more magical or special in a sense too, than if it was like to have run its course as like a full-fledged band.
I did read. I didn't even know this before the interview started, and I was like, I have the Instagram open and stuff, and I saw that Gabe passed. I figured I just figured I'd just point that out that I saw that. I didn't know. I saw that you guys weren't gonna play anymore, just because of that whole piece. So I didn't know you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, occasionally we'll get messages like, "Hey, you want to play a show?" And we're like, "Absolutely no." I don't know. It's weird, but I don't know. I mean, for me, that guy was like such an amazing, important part of my life, and so when he left, it was just I don't know. It's just weird. There's a lot to it. I could do a whole podcast on that, on him, and just the place that he held in my life and my world is just so important. So yeah, it's a weird one for sure.
Well, it seems like you guys were a super tight knit band, like all the way through.
That is true. It's pretty crazy to like think back about as much touring and stuff that the band did, and the fact that there was like very little drama or issues with each other. It was pretty insane how the four of us, and also like our sound engineer and our tour manager too, like where they were also part of the mix too. Like everybody just got along fairly well with all things considered. It seemed pretty rare when I think about bands and the issues that people deal with on tour and stuff.
I think pretty much a lot of the bands, almost every band I've talked to, they all really got along. And then usually at the end is where it starts to kind of break apart, and they're like, we can't stand each other, and then they wait a couple of years and they get back together. Yeah, I'm always jealous of the bands that got along. Like I was in a band for a little bit, and we just like imploded. And I'm always asking the questions like, did you guys fight? How were you like on tour? And then you guys are like, oh no, it was great on tour. I was like, fuck you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We did fight at times. There were difficult times for sure, but like the amount of touring that we did and the amount of stuff that we did together, the sort of like little hiccups that we faced were just that they were just like a hiccup, really. It wasn't like a monumental, substantial thing, which I think is great.
All right, man. Well, actually, real quick, so what are you doing now again? You have your record label and you're managing bands, you're booking bands?
No, fuck that. I don't want. Yeah, I just I
What an answer.
yeah, I play in a couple bands, and then I run 31G, and I also am a publicist, which is that's a hard one too. But yeah, I do that because I can do it on tour and stuff. Those are the main things that I do. I mean, I do other things. I just wrote a new book. Like I do other things too. Trying to be. I'm always trying to do something new.
And you're still touring?
Yeah, I go on tour in Europe all of October, or October, April, all of April, and then I have some stuff in May. Where are you located?
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I won't, yeah, because in May I have some dates, but I won't be out there.
Do you ever play East Coast or like the like North Carolina, Virginia area?
Yeah, Def Club was on tour, and we were on tour with Greg Puciato's band solo thing. I think we played over there. I can't remember how long ago that was. Yeah, we come through. I'll come through with some band at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, they got you ever played Cat's Cradle back in the day?
Yep,
Or
yep,
yep.
yep.
That's right up the street in Chapel Hill. There's the Ritz here. It's kind of a bigger venue. There's Lincoln Theater. I don't know. I think like Lincoln. I feel like Raleigh just gets missed a lot, but the Ritz, like Bad Religion, just played there a couple of years with like the Lawrence years ago with the Lawrence Arms. So it's like we'll get those shows, and then but Cat's Cradle, everyone fucking knows that place.
Yep. Yeah, I played a bunch there with a bunch of different bands. So yeah.
All right, man. Before I ask the last two questions, is there a story you've always wanted to tell in an interview that you never told before that you'd like to tell now?
Man, I might have told this story, but maybe not in an interview or anything. I brought my previous dog Gigi, who passed away. I brought her on tour with me, and it was so fun to have her go on tour. But I remember she was obsessed with a laser pointer. We were at this place called the Glass House in Pomona, and I was with Mel Banana. And I remember like there was no one there, yet. Like it was like load in or something, and so I had like let her go inside the venue, and I was like putting the laser pointer all over, and she was going berserk and sliding around on the floor and like trying to get the laser pointer. Melt Banana's reaction to the how insane Gigi was so rad. I mean, obviously watching a dog freak out like that is so rad, but also watching Mel Banana, who are just adorable, great people, react to Gigi was such a cool thing. And it was so funny to like think about. So I was on tour with Retox at the time, and not that Melt Banana is like a gnarly band or anything like that. They're awesome, but they're also like not nasty, I guess. Like some people might say that the bands that I like, they're not like Retox or Death Club or something. They're just kind of like they're fun. And anyhow, so it was just funny to like think about this venue was about to fill up with all these people that were going to go nuts and like mosh and stage dive, but there was like this cocker spaniel like running around and like I don't know, it was just it was like the juxtaposition to what it was going to be as a show, and so I was like really appreciative of that aspect. It kind of like ties into like how you said like people have this perception of you on tour, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, absolutely not. So yeah, that's like the antithesis of what I think would be in the Motley Crue book that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think a lot of the interviews that I do now, I'm talking to bands that I knew of 20 years ago, and I get to talk to you guys and see what was really going on because all you have is magazines and whatever just giving you this whatever they're going to give you, or the band's going to give you what they're going to give you. So you don't really know them. So you're kind of making up your own idea of who they are. Like if you see a ska band, you're like Real Big Fish, you're like, oh, those guys must be upbeat and poppy all the time and always happy. And you'd see, like Dillinger Escape Plan, you're like, that must be really intense when they're in the fucking van. And you just kind like you just kind of see that. So I love to just humanize people and be like, what do you guys really like? And they're like, I don't know, we're kind of chill, or we did some crazy shit, or we don't do crazy shit. It's just for me personally, like 18-year-old me is just like, oh, I wonder if I was right or if I was completely wrong. And usually I was pretty wrong. Like unless it was and I'll probably bleep that out, but they were like just having fucking orgies and shit all the time.
Well, that's interesting because you think about, like, for me, I guess, like, to use, I hate Molly Crew, but that book is interesting, and I wonder how much of this is made up, but I think it comes from, like, it might be like an era that, like, has passed, but the stuff that we were doing, like, in the 90s or even in the 2000s, like, I just think that the landscape changed, but also, like, if you think of a band like the Locust, I don't know, like, I think we already negate, like, all these different things that could happen in a band scenario. It's an insane band. Like, why would it be that we do that to, like, I don't know, sort of like express something? Why would it be like that 24 hours a day? Like, it doesn't make sense. So it seems like you would, to me, I would assume, like, something that's intense.
Stays there.
Yeah, no, like, yeah, it's just like that's your thing that you're creating, so you can live a normal functioning human life
Mm.
without being, like, on 10 all the time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. For the most part, it's like, in the Locust or whatever, it's like, I need to eat well. I need to get sleep, because I can't do this, like, every day for 30 or 40 days in a row. I need to, like, not fuck around and be stupid. Some people can, but yeah. So for me, I don't think I want to do that.
Cool, man. All right, so last two questions before that's last one. What would you like to plug? It could be about you, it could be about a friend, or like some organization you love, or it could be about both.
Oh man. Okay, I don't want to make this about me, but it isn't about me, actually. But I also do a podcast called Cult and Culture, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, you have a podcast?" And I'm like, "God damn it! Like, how did I wish people knew about it?" But it's interesting, and this isn't like a dig on anybody that does podcast or anything like that. But occasionally, people will solicit an artist to us, and we have all these limitations. Like, for us, it has to be in person, and for the most part, I want to know them, like, as a friend. Like, I want them to know, because I don't want to have a bunch of questions. I just want to, like, go, like, hey, this is my friend. I'm gonna go hang out in person for like an hour, and I usually just have, like, a starting point, one little thing, and then next thing you know, an hour and a half later, you're like, that was fucking awesome. How the hell did that happen? And it was just like a really great, normal, organic conversation that goes two ways, because, like, I want to know them and them to know me, and we can just have, like, a normal conversation that goes both ways. And I think that's cool. It is technically a podcast, but for me, it just seems like I'm just going to hang out with my friend here, and we're going to record it, and then you can listen to it, and that's how it is. Yeah, I'm always, like, excited, like, when we do an episode. I'm like, God, that was so fucking cool, like, hanging out. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, Cult and Culture is the name of it. I guess that's the plug. It's me and my friends hanging out.
Perfect. I think people kind of get down, not saying you just did, but like I was listening to, everyone will make jokes online. And it's like, oh, they have a podcast together. I think that everybody could have one because you don't have to have the entire world listen to you. There's just a certain niche audience that you need, and people want to hear things, right? Like when certain bands or people that I've followed through the years and they start something, I'm like, ooh, what do they like in behind these scenes? Like, this is a great example, but like Daniel Tosh, do you ever watch like?
Oh, I love that guy. Wait, you had him on your podcast?
No, no.
No, I thought
Oh God,
you.
that'd be so amazing. No, he
I
has a
know.
he has a podcast. He interviews like he starts his first interviews with his wife's gynecologist, but he asks these really interesting questions. But then he'll kind of like talk about his kids, and he'll kind of humanize himself for a little bit, and or he'll have his friends on, and they're talking back and forth, and you're like, oh wow, this guy isn't this character. You get to see who he is, and a little bit more. It kind of broadens the view a little bit more. I dig that shit. Like I think that when people, it's like you just kind of go on, you do your own style, as long as it matches your tone and it's not forced. 'Cause I hate forced podcasts. They drive me fucking crazy. They're so fucking annoying. It's like stop being a character. It's like so goddamn annoying. But anyway, I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Well, I think that guy's brilliant. I wonder, like, at one point when he's going to get canceled. Not that I want him to get canceled, but I feel like he always just goes right to that line, and I love that. I really, really like that he goes to that line, and you're like, motherfucker, he really brought that. And
Oh, he's been doing it forever. I don't think they can. I think he's been doing it for so long that if anyone tried to do the cancel culture shit on him, he'd be like, really? Here's my back catalog. You're gonna start this now, and they'd be like, all right, you can't.
I mean, if let's try to get him on our podcast. That guy's so rad, man.
Oh, he's so
I
great.
would.
He's a surfer. He's like a diehard surfer.
It makes sense. He kind of has that vibe, I think.
Well, cool, dude. All right, last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Ethics. I mean, I think that's like, well, what's a scene ethic? I don't know. Because to me, and my ethics are my ethics, and they were kind of like already in place before I even knew what a scene was.
Well, kind of like what did you learn when you started going to shows and what you got from that? Like some people, they open their eyes up to being vegan. Some people open their eyes up to straight edge, to just not being a fucking asshole, to accepting people. It's like depending on the scene too. Like the scene I grew up in, that's what I got out of it. It's just all those things. And so like for you in the San Diego scene or the scene that you played in, like what did you pull from that that was good?
Ha. Oh, okay. Well, a lot of the stuff that you listed off were scene ethics that I got, but I do think one of the things that I got specifically from being from San Diego was this sort of like hodgepodge of art that we got here, because I think that it's a unique city in the sense that it's very diverse because we don't have a lot of infrastructure, or at least growing up in the 90s, we didn't have a lot of infrastructure for what, like, I guess like Los Angeles had or something. So in a sense, like when you were putting on a show, or let's say you were going to a show, it wasn't going to be a bunch of punk bands or a bunch of hardcore bands or a bunch of metal bands or a bunch of hip hop. It'd be like everything thrown together, and all these different kinds of people would go, and that in a sense made for a different level of like diverse outcome. And I think that that's one thing that I definitely gathered from being a San Diegan and being exposed to the scene in San Diego, was just like this mix of stuff. I don't know, like here, I guess I'll bring it back to like a good Gabe Serbian quote that always stuck with me is someone asked him like what hardcore bands he listens to, and he said, "Oh, I don't listen to hardcore, I just play it." And I was like, "Oh, that's so good," because we grew up like not really, listening to a lot of hardcore. We would grow up going and seeing, all kinds of music together, and it was unique. And I think that that was something that I got from being as part of like the San Diego scene, I suppose. Like a good example would be to reference bands like Drive Like Jehu or Crash Worship, even like Antioch Arrow, like the third Antioch Arrow record, where you're just like, what the fuck is that? And that shit is like great because their influences are just so diverse. So that's something that I think San Diego definitely has in its DNA.